I'm sorry. An urgent overseas business trip just came up, and I absolutely can't cancel. It's a massive project for the firm. I can't say no, but I'll try to make it back in time for the delivery. You'll have to handle things here on your own. Leaving me standing there, about to enter my 9th month of pregnancy with a belly so large it looked ready to burst, my husband Garrison delivered those words and practically sprinted out the door of our Chicago townhouse. In his hand, he rolled a brand new suitcase way too large for a standard 1-week corporate trip. I already knew that inside that luggage, there were no spreadsheets or tailored suits, but rather flashy, matching soccer jerseys. The metallic click of the deadbolt echoed heavily as the front door slammed shut. My husband didn't look back, nor did he offer a single word of concern for my health. At that moment, he had no idea. A few days later, what would await him upon his triumphant return to the States wouldn't be a hot meal or a welcoming wife, but a completely stripped, empty house, void of a single piece of furniture, and a deep, irreversible despair. Left behind in the silent living room, I sank deep into the sofa, utterly alone. The ticking of the grandfather clock resonated loudly as the winter evening set in. I slowly placed both hands over my swollen stomach. Feeling the warm, real life moving inside me, tears naturally slipped down my cheeks. "It's okay. Mommy will protect you no matter what," I whispered softly. As if in response, I felt a gentle little kick. After 5 years of marriage, this little girl was a deeply desired miracle for us. For the first few years, we struggled to conceive, and I spent countless mornings driving alone to a private fertility clinic downtown. The agony of the daily hormone injections, the emotional roller coaster of tracking basal body temperatures, and the nights I spent sobbing silently into my pillow every time my cycle started. Pushing through 3 agonizing years of IVF, this irreplaceable life finally took root in my womb. However, while I savored the joy of the pregnancy, Garrison's attitude slowly but surely turned ice cold. One night, when my morning sickness was so severe I couldn't stomach the thought of cooking dinner, Garrison clicked his tongue and told me that pregnancy wasn't a disease. He said he worked his fingers to the bone every day at the corporate office, coming home exhausted, and since we were eating thanks to his paycheck, I should at least manage the basic household chores. Seeing the dead, cold look in his eyes, I felt something silently shatter deep inside my chest. If I had become a stay-at-home wife, it wasn't because I wanted to. It was because Garrison had begged me to manage the home front so he could focus entirely on climbing the corporate ladder. Yet, without realizing it, I had morphed into nothing more than a convenient, unpaid maid that he bankrolled. Still, I swallowed the pain. I told myself that once the baby was born, he would step up, take responsibility as a father, and revert to the kind Garrison I used to know. Garrison and his mother had been psychologically manipulating me for years. They gaslit me into believing I was the problem, that our infertility was solely my fault, and that I was essentially worthless. I was a victim of their constant emotional abuse, which shredded my self-esteem and chained me to that townhouse. I didn't want to worry my parents, so I hadn't breathed a word to them about my husband's freezing demeanor. But my modest hopes had been completely obliterated just a few days prior. While Garrison was in the shower, I had taken the opportunity to peek inside the suitcase he had pulled from the closet for his business trip. What I found wasn't business casual attire, but a pile of resort wear and 2 custom soccer jerseys. Printed on the back was the logo for a massive international exhibition tournament being held in Dubai. And shoved carelessly into the mesh pocket of the suitcase were the printed stubs for 2 first-class Emirates boarding passes. There, right next to Garrison's name, was the name of an unknown woman, Tatum Vance. My hands shook. I couldn't catch my breath. Leaving his heavily pregnant wife home alone, capable of going into labor at any second, my husband was flying to the United Arab Emirates to watch soccer with his mistress. That was the true identity of the massive corporate project. Before anger even registered, a profound wave of sorrow and emptiness washed over me. While I had tortured my body with fertility treatments and was now desperately trying to hold our daily life together while carrying this heavy belly, my husband was laughing it up with another woman. "Serafina, you really are useless." Garrison's recent favorite catchphrase echoed in my head. "I'm not useless. You're just using my existence to distract yourself from your own pathetic reality." I stood up from the sofa and slowly scanned the room. The expensive mid-century modern furniture chosen to fit his tastes, the closet overflowing with his designer clothes, the heavy crystal tumbler he drank his bourbon from every night. This house reeked of my husband's presence. Yet, there was absolutely nothing here protecting me or the little girl in my womb. It was right at that moment. A dull, heavy pain, unlike anything I had ever experienced, ripped through my lower abdomen. A groan escaped my lips. I clutched my stomach and doubled over right there on the rug. I was still more than 2 weeks away from my due date. But the pain grew stronger, coming in relentless waves. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead. Labor had started. With trembling fingers, I grabbed my smartphone and dialed my husband's number. His flight to Dubai had taken off just an hour ago. All I got was the robotic voice of the carrier's voicemail. Your call has been forwarded. My husband was already cruising at 30,000 feet, likely sitting next to his mistress, sipping a glass of complimentary champagne, buzzing with excitement for the luxury vacation ahead. The pain in my belly struck with even greater ferocity. Out of the corner of my eye, as I collapsed onto the hardwood floor, I heard the faint scrape of a key turning in the deadbolt. Had Garrison forgotten something and come back? But the sharp, heavy footsteps clicking into the foyer didn't belong to him. Sarah, you're in here, right? Garrison asked me to pop in and check on you while he's away. The voice I dreaded most in the world echoed through the quiet hall. It was my mother-in-law, Olympe, the woman who had just let herself in with a spare key, showing zero respect for the lady of the house, strolled into the living room, her hard designer heels clacking obnoxiously. Well. Sitting on the floor in the middle of a weekday. You sure live a relaxed life just because Garrison isn't around, pregnant or not. Have some grace when your husband is out there working himself to the bone. Olympe looked down her nose at me as I curled into a ball, clutching my stomach. She let out an exasperated sigh. Hanging from the crook of her arm, prominently displayed, was an absurdly expensive designer handbag Garrison had gifted her for Mother's Day last month. Olympe. My stomach hurt so much. When I finally squeezed those desperate words out, a deep wrinkle formed between her brows. Oh, contractions. You're still 2 weeks early. Honestly, you've always been the type of girl who only causes inconveniences at the absolute worst times. Going into labor right during Garrison's crucial business trip. So much for my boy being able to focus on his work. Far from showing an ounce of concern, her tone implied I had deliberately induced labor just to sabotage her son. As my face contorted in agony, I felt an icy wind blow through my soul. For years, Olympe's words had continuously reopened old wounds. During our 5 years of marriage, I had endured her frigid glares and irrational demands. When I first married Garrison, I agreed without complaint when he suggested buying a condo close to his mother's house in the suburbs. I thought it was natural to build a good relationship with the in-laws. But that olive branch only resulted in Olympe labeling me a convenient, easily dominated daughter-in-law who would never talk back. Using her spare key, she would let herself in over the slightest excuse. Her daily routine involved opening my fridge one. I gritted my teeth and bore it, believing that once a child came, the tension would melt away. But as the years passed with no pregnancy, her words became razor blades. Garrison is the man of the house. We don't need a woman who can't provide an heir. In the old days, they would have shipped you back to your parents. Do you understand your place? She would say these things openly at Thanksgiving dinners. I could only clench my trembling fists under the table, waiting for the storm to pass. When I begged Garrison for backup, he'd just stare at the NFL game on TV, annoyed. My mom doesn't mean any harm. Be an adult and let it go. Don't put me in the middle. I'm tired from working all day. Instead of defending me, he sent me to the fertility clinic alone. I'll never forget the cold look he gave me when the tests revealed his sperm count was fine, and the issue might lie with my constitution. If it's not my fault, you need to fix this. These treatments aren't cheap, so make sure you give me results. From that day on, Garrison started coming home later. The faint scent of sweet perfume clinging to his lapels, his unnatural attachment to his iPhone. I noticed the red flags, but I played blind. I had shackled myself to the curse that until I produced a child, I had no right to complain in this house. When the ultrasound finally showed a tiny heartbeat, I wept loudly in the doctor's office. Finally, we can be a normal family. But that modest hope was instantly betrayed. Upon hearing the news, Olympe's first comment was that it had better be a boy, because a girl was useless as an heir. Garrison just offered a hollow smirk and said he was glad people would finally stop pestering him about it. Now, leaving his wife ready to burst, he had flown to Dubai with his mistress. What the hell have I worn down my soul and my body for over these 5 years? A guttural scream ripped from my throat as a massive contraction hit. I gripped the rug tightly. The waves of pain were closer together. Seeing me thrashing, rubbing my forehead against the floorboards, even Olympi paled slightly. Geez, it's really coming. What a drag. What are you going to do if my water breaks on my new shoes? Fine, I'll call an Uber. Olympi clicked her tongue and hurriedly pulled out her iPhone. While waiting for the car, she started muttering irritably to herself. Garrison has the worst luck. Right when he's having the time of his life in Dubai with Tatum, in that instant, every drop of blood seemed to drain from my body. The shock was so immense it temporarily eclipsed the physical pain. What did she just say? I snapped my head up as if pulled by a string, glaring at my mother-in-law who had just ended the call. Olympi. What did you just say? I rasped. Olympe slapped a hand over her mouth for a second, realizing her slip-up. But showing zero remorse, she quickly morphed her expression into a defiant sneer. Oh, please, a business trip. It's a business trip. Garrison is in Dubai for crucial work. Though, a man really has no future if he doesn't have the capacity to take his young, talented subordinate under his wing. I suppose a freeloader who just sits at home wouldn't understand. Her eyes weren't smiling. With those words, the dots connected with terrifying clarity. Olymp knew everything. She knew Garrison wasn't working, but vacationing with his mistress, Tatum. She was an active accomplice in his infidelity. Oh, right. Garrison left a hefty sum of cash with me, saying it was for your living expenses and the hospital copays while he was gone. He said if he left it with you, you'd probably squander it. That's why I came out of my way to check on you. You should be thanking me. Those words pushed me into the abyss. My husband hadn't left the envelope of cash we had painstakingly saved for the hospital bills on the counter. He had handed it to his mother to act as my financial warden. Another contraction squeezed my lower abdomen. But this time, not a single tear fell. What bubbled up from the pit of my stomach wasn't sorrow or despair, but the cold, silent, white-hot flame of pure rage. I was utterly alone. Nobody was protecting me. And this little girl fighting to live inside me wasn't loved by this selfish family either. At that moment, a warm gush of fluid soaked my leggings and the rug. My water had broken. Right as a new life was about to enter the world, I silently forged an unbreakable vow to walk out of this house and take my life back. Gross! You splashed amniotic fluid on my pumps. I can't believe this. You are a complete nuisance. Instead of helping me, Olympi raged about her designer shoes. Panting through the crushing pain, I managed to squeeze out my voice. Olympi, I'm sorry. Please, call the hospital. She just clicked her tongue, wiping the toe of her shoe with a tissue. Always causing trouble. What would you have done if I hadn't shown up? She stormed out the front door, leaving me to crawl after her without even offering a shoulder to lean on. In the back of the Uber Black, I gripped the leather seats every time a wave of agony hit. Olympe, sitting as far away from me as possible, complained loudly so the driver would hear. Why did it have to be today? Ruining the trip he worked so hard to organize with Tatum. Do you realize what a burden you are? The driver looked at me with deep concern through the rearview mirror, offering gentle words of encouragement. A random Chicago Uber driver possessed more warmth than the woman who was supposed to be my family. When we reached the emergency room doors, the nurses rushed out with a wheelchair. You're doing great, sweetie. We've got you. Let's get you to labor and delivery, a nurse said softly. The tension in my heart loosened slightly, but Olympe's parting words dragged me back to reality. Well, I'm heading out. Waiting around for a daughter-in-law to give birth is exhausting, and I hate the sight of blood. She's your problem now. The triage nurse looked at her in shock. You're not staying? Her husband isn't here. Nope. My son is overseas on important business, Olympi replied without missing a beat. If there's a deductible, bill it to her. She slammed the car door without an ounce of shame and rode off. That was the true face of the family I had served for 5 years. The battle in the delivery room was unimaginable agony. Hovering on the edge of passing out, the brutal memories of IVF flashed behind my eyelids. If it's not my fault, you need to fix this. Usually, a husband is holding your hand, wiping your sweat, and telling you how strong you are. But I was alone. Under the blazing sun of Dubai, my husband was likely cuddled up, laughing with Tatum. I bit my lips so hard I tasted copper. Almost there, Serafina. Big push. I gathered every ounce of strength I had left. Not for my husband. Not to be accepted by my in-laws. Just for me. And for this little girl. A vigorous cry echoed through the sterile room. Congratulations, she's a perfectly healthy baby girl. The tiny, squirming life, covered in blood and vernix, was placed gently on my chest. The instant I felt her incredible warmth and weight, a massive wave of emotion washed away all the suffering and loneliness. Thank you for being born. Embracing her trembling little body, I sobbed out loud. In the quiet of that room, I made an ironclad decision. I would protect this girl alone. I would never let her be a victim of those monsters. A few hours later, while I was resting in the maternity ward with an IV in my arm, Olympi reappeared. Far from bringing flowers or a balloon, she strolled in empty-handed. She glanced sideways at my daughter sleeping in the bassinet and let out a dramatic sigh. Well, it's a girl. You're the wife of the man of the house, and you can't even give him an heir on the first try. Garrison will be devastated. Well, as long as Tatum gives us a healthy boy, there won't be an issue. Olympe, what did you just say? Tatum is giving us a boy? I asked, my voice razor sharp. She quickly covered her mouth, claiming she was thinking out loud, but her shifty eyes betrayed her. Was the mistress pregnant too? If so, Garrison's bizarre behavior these past few months, his extreme frigidity, and this sudden business trip all made perfect sense. Olympi wasn't just hiding his affair. She was actively conspiring with them while the mistress carried a child. I desperately suppressed the volcanic rage erupting inside me, grinding my molars. Feigning calmness, I looked at her. Olympi, billing administration needs me to put a card on file for my deductible and the out-of-pocket maximum. Could you give me the envelope of cash Garrison left with you? She scoffed. Oh, that money is gone. What do you mean, gone? Just what I said. Garrison went on an international trip with a young woman. Flights, luxury hotels, shopping in Dubai, it all adds up. He told me his allowance wasn't enough, so I transferred that envelope into his checking account. That was crucial money for giving birth to this child. Oh, stop being dramatic. It's just a hospital copay. Put it on your own credit card. You're a terrible housekeeper. And now you want to sponge off Garrison's hard-earned money? She shrugged dismissively, complained that the hospital air was giving her a headache, and walked out. Alone in the hospital room, my entire body shook with fury. My husband had taken the funds dedicated to the birth of our own daughter to fund a luxury vacation with his pregnant mistress, and his mother had facilitated it. I took a deep breath and pulled my phone from the bedside table. If the cash envelope was gone, I had no choice but to pay via the joint savings account Garrison and I had been building for our future child's expenses. Including the money I had saved from my old part-time jobs, there should have been over $25,000 in there. I opened my Chase banking app and entered my passcode with trembling fingers. The moment the dashboard loaded, my heart dropped with a sickening thud. The $25,000 was gone. The available balance was $65. Looking at the recent transactions, I saw a horrifying record. Just a few days before my water broke, the entire sum had been wired to an external account belonging to Tatum Vance. Balance: $65. Time completely stopped. The savings meant to protect our daughter over $25K we had painstakingly saved had been handed over to a stranger just days before I went into labor. My husband had drained our child's future to fund his new life with his mistress. Unbelievable, I whispered to the empty room. I had pushed far past sorrow. All that remained was a cold, calculating wrath, freezing my mind into a sharp point. My newborn slept peacefully in the bassinet, her tiny hands curled into fists. The money meant to protect her had been laughed away. That fact turned the spark in my heart into an unquenchable inferno. A few days later, I was discharged. Usually, a husband or parents bring a bouquet to celebrate the new family. I had no one waiting. No text from Olympe, and Garrison was still under the desert sun of the UAE. I considered calling my dad, Harlan Callahan. He's a retired union foreman, a man of few words, but a fiercely protective father. But knowing how deeply it would crush and enrage him to see me in this miserable state, I held off. When I called him the night before, I played it cool. Dad, the delivery went great. Yeah. Garrison is slammed with his corporate trip. I'll just take an Uber home. My dad paused on the line. Sarah. If anything ever happens, you come home whenever you want. I'm always in your corner. Hearing his gruff but warm voice almost broke me, but I maintained a cheerful tone. I needed everything perfectly arranged before I brought my parents into the blast radius. Wrapping my newborn in a white blanket, I got into an Uber. The destination was the townhouse I now loathed. Unlocking the door, I was greeted by the same desolate mess from the day I went into labor. Garrison's socks in the hallway, wet towels on the bathroom floor. I gently laid my daughter in her secure crib. I took a deep breath. I no longer had the eyes of a submissive wife. I had returned to this house to unearth the truth. I went straight to Garrison's home office, a man cave filled with sports memorabilia. I dumped the trash can onto the floor. Smoothing out the crumpled papers, I found a glossy travel agency envelope. Inside wasn't just a flight stub, but a fully paid, non-refundable VIP itinerary. Travelers: Mr. Garrison and Miss Tatum Vance. Itinerary: 7 nights, 9 days. Accommodation: suite at the Waldorf Astoria Dubai Palm Jumeirah. Total paid: $10,500. I let out a dark chuckle. The man who lectured me about buying brand-name groceries had dropped 10 grand on a vacation with his mistress, using the money meant for his daughter. Digging deeper, I found a crumpled receipt from a luxury boutique on the Magnificent Mile. Item: diamond baby ring. Price: $2,500. My heart skipped a beat. A baby ring is a keepsake parents buy when a child is born. Did he buy it for our daughter? No. If he had, why was it in the trash? Olympe's words echoed in my mind. As long as Tatum gives us a healthy boy. Tatum was pregnant, and Garrison, having lost all interest in his own daughter, had bought a $2,500 diamond ring for his mistress's unborn child. While I was throwing up from morning sickness and enduring the pain of IVF alone, he was preparing to build a new family. I will never forgive you, my voice rang out with terrifying coldness in the empty room. No tears fell. My mind was shockingly clear. I will not be thrown away like garbage. I will gather every piece of evidence, back them into an inescapable corner, and take absolutely everything from them. I whipped out my iPhone and photographed the itinerary and the jewelry receipt clearly. I put the originals in a plastic folder and hid them in my diaper bag. There had to be more. I tore through his desk drawers. Because he thought he had me completely under his thumb, his attempts at hiding things were laughably sloppy. Under a stack of old greeting cards, I found a manila envelope. Inside were photos of Garrison and a heavily contoured young woman, laughing and hugging in front of an upscale apartment complex. Tatum Vance. Also inside was a copy of an apartment lease agreement. Tenant: Garrison. Occupant: Tatum Vance. And on the line for the financial guarantor, bearing a clear notarized signature, was the name Olympe. Even you, Olympe, I rasped. My mother-in-law wasn't just turning a blind eye, she had legally backed the mistress's luxury apartment. She had lectured me on household budgeting while co-signing a lease for her son's side piece. This meant the entire family viewed me as a disposable incubator and an unpaid maid. I photographed every inch of the lease, taking extreme close-ups of Olympe's signature. Searching the bookshelf, I found an old iPad tucked behind some business books. Garrison had claimed the screen was broken, and he threw it away. Finding it suspicious, I plugged it in. The lock screen popped up. I thought for a second, then typed in the birth date listed on Tatum's lease agreement. Click. It unlocked. This was the burner device he used to communicate with them at home. The iMessage app was open. The pinned group chat wasn't named Laura or work, but simply family. The participants were Garrison, Tatum, and Olympe. With trembling fingers, I scrolled up. It was a digital graveyard of insults aimed at me. Garrison, the useless freeloader, is complaining about morning sickness again. Dinner was a joke. She's good for nothing, Mom. Olympe. Women used to give birth in the fields while working. She's so dramatic. She should take notes from Tatum. Tatum. Aw, thanks, Olympe. I feel great. I just want to have Garrison's baby soon so you can hold him. Garrison. Our baby is going to be perfect, babe. Our true treasure. I forgot how to breathe. While I was crying in the bathroom, they were having these conversations. I scrolled down to the day before I went into labor. Garrison. Finally, Dubai tomorrow. So glad to escape this suffocating house for a week. Tatum. Yes. Sarah was always taking up my spot. Finally, I get you to myself in public. Olympi, have the best time, you two. Leave that woman to me. You secured the hospital funds for your new life, right, Garrison? Garrison. Yep. Drained the joint Chase account and wired it all to Tatum. I earned that money. Sarah isn't getting a dime. Olympi. Good boy. I'll break her down. By the time you get back, I'll have her backed into a corner ready to sign the divorce papers. That was their script. Strip me of my dignity and cash, force me out while they vacationed, and step into their new life. Like hell you will, I seethed. I airdropped every screenshot to my phone, securing the evidence. Just then, my daughter stirred and let out a soft cry. I rushed to the nursery and scooped her up. She was innocent, trusting me with her life. Don't worry, Mommy is going to send them straight to hell. I hummed like a lullaby while patting her back. Suddenly, the iPad screen lit up on the desk. A new iMessage. The sender was Olympe. Still holding my baby, I peered at the screen. The preview notification made my blood boil, then freeze. Olympi. Garrison, pick up your phone. The hospital in Dubai just called. Tatum collapsed and her water broke. Why is your phone off? I held my breath. The husband who had abandoned me at 9 months pregnant was now trapped in a foreign country, panicking over his mistress's premature labor, with a phone that wouldn't connect. I smiled. A terrifying, icy smile. Olymp's panic texts kept rolling in. Olympi, what the hell happened? She's only 6 months. Why did they take her away in an ambulance? The doctor spoke English but with an accent. I didn't understand everything, but they kept demanding money. Call me back. I let out a mocking laugh. The irony of fate. Anyone with half a brain knows how catastrophically expensive emergency medical care is abroad without international health insurance. An emergency C-section and a premature baby in an expatriate-focused luxury hospital NICU in Dubai? The bill would skyrocket to tens of thousands of dollars in a matter of days, and hundreds of thousands if it dragged on. The $25,000 he stole from our daughter would vaporize in hours. Karma's a bitch, I whispered. But I wasn't going to leave my vengeance to divine retribution or fate. I was going to use the law to crush them into dust. I shoved the iPad into my bag, pulled out my phone, and called my dad. Sarah, what's wrong? It's late. Harlan's calm, gravelly voice answered. Dad, I choked out, fighting the tremble in my voice. Can you come over right now? Bring the F-150? Pick you up? Didn't you just get discharged? Where's Garrison? He's not here. Please, just come. Don't ask questions yet. I can't stay in this house another second. My dad fell dead silent. He could hear the absolute desperation and resolve in my tone. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Pack your bags. 20 minutes later, my dad's truck idled out front. I had packed my hospital bag and the baby's things. I hadn't touched a single item belonging to Garrison. My dad walked in, his face etched with worry. He gently stroked his sleeping granddaughter's cheek, then looked at my red, swollen eyes. Sarah, tell me everything. Standing in the cold living room, I told him the whole truth. The abuse, the gaslighting, the mistress, the drained bank account, the Dubai trip, and Olymp's master plan to kick me out. My dad listened without interrupting once, but his massive, calloused hands were gripping his knees so hard his knuckles were bone white. The sheer, silent fury radiating from him was more terrifying than any shout. Sarah, you've carried this all by yourself, he finally said, his voice breaking. That one sentence shattered the ice around my heart. You don't have to carry it anymore. We're leaving right now. Your mother and I will protect you, and this little girl. I will absolutely destroy them for this. He effortlessly hauled my bags to the truck, secured the car seat, and helped me in. I looked back at the condo one last time. I locked the deadbolt and tossed my key into the mailbox. I would never open that door again. The next morning, I left my baby with my mom, Lenora, and walked into a sleek downtown law firm with my dad. The brass plaque read, Thaddeus Sterling, attorney at law. He was a ruthless family law attorney and an old friend of my dad's. Harlan, good to see you. This must be Serafina. Please, sit down. We sat in the leather chairs. I placed the plastic folder on his mahogany desk, The Dubai itinerary, the jewelry receipt, the lease agreement, and the printed iMessage screenshots. Sterling put on his reading glasses. The only sound was the rustling of paper. After a few minutes, he let out a heavy sigh and removed his glasses. Serafina, managing to secure this level of documentation right after giving birth is astonishing. You have a brilliant mind for this. He tapped the papers. With clear proof of the affair and the unauthorized dissipation of marital assets, a divorce filing with a disproportionate division of assets is a slam dunk. Furthermore, Illinois allows for claims of intentional infliction of emotional distress under specific egregious circumstances. He pointed to the group chat printouts. And this. Olympe acting as a guarantor and actively conspiring to defraud you. This elevates it. We can pursue civil action against your mother-in-law for her role in hiding assets and facilitating the financial abuse. My mother-in-law too? Yes. They wanted to take everything from you. The law will ensure they lose everything instead. I bowed my head. Please, Mr. Sterling. I don't just want the money back. I want them to face the absolute reality of what they've done. Consider it done. We'll immediately file motions to freeze his accounts. Just as a ray of hope pierced my heart, Sterling flipped over the apartment lease agreement. He squinted at the fine print on the addendum. His expression darkened. Serafina, let me confirm something. You said he took $25,000 from the joint account, correct? Yes. I see. Well, it appears that when signing the lease for Tatum's apartment, your husband also originated a massive personal loan through a digital lending institution to cover a year's rent up front, luxury furniture, and other expenses. The loan amount is $85,000. $85,000? My dad and I gasped in unison. Garrison made decent money, but an unsecured loan that large was virtually impossible to get a loan. How could he get approved for that? I asked, my voice shaking. Sterling pointed a manicured finger at the signature line. Look here. This is the cosigner section. Right there, neatly printed next to a DocuSign digital certification stamp, was my name, Serafina Callahan. My stomach plummeted. A sickening memory surfaced. Weeks ago, while I was bedridden with severe morning sickness, Garrison shoved his iPad in my face. Sarah, sign this real quick via DocuSign. It's an urgent tax authorization for our joint return. Dizzy and exhausted, I had typed in my digital signature without reading the screen. He had tricked me into becoming the legal cosigner for an $85,000 loan to fund his mistress's lifestyle. This is federal wire fraud and felony identity theft, Sterling said, his voice dropping to a lethal register. Forging your signature to assume $85,000 in debt is a severe criminal offense. If we file a police report, your husband is looking at an arrest, immediate termination from his corporate job, and potential prison time. But why $85,000? I asked. Isn't that way too much just for apartment furniture? Sterling grabbed the iPad transcripts. Let's dig into these messages. He searched the chat history for keywords like loan or 85K prime. A horrifying exchange between Garrison and Olympe populated the screen. My dad's massive frame shook violently as he read it. Garrison. Mom, the loan for Tatum's place is approved, but the upfront costs are huge. Plus, I need cash to pay my divorce lawyer when I drop Sarah. Olympe. Don't worry. Take out a huge personal loan, like $85K. Garrison. $85K? I can't pay that back on my salary. Olympe. You aren't going to pay it. Add Sarah as the cosigner via DocuSign. Kick her out without a dime. Garrison. But Sarah can't afford that either. Olympe. If she defaults, her parents will pay it. Her dad Harlan just retired from the union, right? His $401K and pension have to be worth hundreds of thousands. If their precious daughter comes crying about bankruptcy, they'll empty their retirement to pay the debt so they don't face the stigma of bad credit and financial ruin. We use that to pay off the loan, and I keep the surplus for my luxury retirement condo, and the rest goes to Tatum's baby. Garrison, you're a genius, Mom. Sarah's family cares too much about appearances. They'll pay it to keep it quiet. Olympe. Exactly. Sarah was never anything more than our ATM. The conference room descended into a suffocating silence. The shock was so profound I couldn't even cry. They hadn't just mistreated me because of my fertility struggles. From day one, they had targeted my family's assets. They planned to saddle me with fraudulent debt, knowing my proud, hard-working father would drain his life savings to save me. Son of a bitch! A guttural growl erupted from beside me. My dad's face was flushed dark red. Those bastards think the money I broke my back 40 years for is just their personal ATM? His voice trembled with raw, unadulterated rage. They stole my daughter's identity to bankrupt us. My dad locked eyes with Sterling. Counselor. Do whatever it takes. Lawsuits. Criminal charges. I don't care what it costs. I want that family to feel exactly what they tried to do to us. Sterling met my dad's intensity and nodded firmly. Leave it to me, Harlan. We will nuke their entire operation from orbit. The law will shield Serafina from the $85,000 debt. By launching the civil suits and criminal complaints simultaneously, we will break them. Sterling turned to me. Serafina, the counterattack is ready. We just need to present them with this reality at the precise moment they suffer maximum damage. First, we empty that townhouse. Empty it? Exactly. We erase every trace of the life you built there. When he returns, we show him the reality. No hot meal, no submissive wife, and no ATM waiting for him. A silent fire solidified in my chest. I was no longer the compliant, abused girl. I'll do it, I said clearly. I'll take every piece of furniture, every appliance, everything I ever paid for. I'll leave nothing but despair. The next day, my silent counteroffensive began. Since I was physically exhausted and recovering from childbirth, my dad took full control. He called in a favor from his old union buddies and organized a trusted moving crew. While Garrison was supposedly dealing with the fallout in Dubai, and I stayed safe at my parents' house nursing my newborn, my dad stripped the townhouse bare. They hauled out the massive French door refrigerator I bought with my savings, the expensive oak dining table he had gifted us, my custom drapes, and even my plants. As the movers hauled everything out, the house transformed into a cold, echoing cavern. I intentionally left his cheap, bachelor pad glass coffee table right in the middle of the empty living room. 3 days later, with my dad gently supporting my weight, I stood in the center of the stripped room. On the glass table, I placed a thick manila envelope prepared by Mr. Sterling. Inside was the divorce petition, the legal notification that the $85,000 debt was fraudulent, and the irrefutable evidence of their crimes. Goodbye, I whispered, tossing my keys through the mail slot on my way out. That night, while feeding my daughter in the safety of my childhood bedroom, my phone buzzed. It was an email alert I had set up to forward from Garrison's iPad. It was an alert from his primary credit card, Chase Sapphire Reserve. Alert: your card has been maxed out. Authorized charge: $15,000. But that wasn't all. Attached to a forwarded email was an urgent legal notice from the Dubai Hospital Administration. Patient. Tatum Vance. Notice of estimated charges. Emergency C. Section. NICU admission. Projected total. $300,000 USD. Mr. Garrison, as the signatory on the admission paperwork, you are legally responsible for this ongoing balance. Please arrange a wire transfer immediately to cover these costs. Failure to do so will result in the hospital initiating legal action, including petitioning the UAE government for a strict travel ban. I stopped breathing. The cost of a premature birth in a VIP luxury hospital abroad without coverage. The $25,000 he stole from us was a drop in the bucket. My husband, who had probably already fled the UAE in a panic, was stepping into a nightmare of debt he couldn't pay off in 3 lifetimes. Sarah, what's wrong? You look pale, my dad asked. I showed him the phone. My dad put on his reading glasses, trying to read the number. $300,000? That's a mortgage. They're charging Garrison's card for Tatum's medical bills. My mom gasped. How is he going to pay that? Sarah, since you're legally married, won't that debt fall on you? My dad shook his head. No. Sterling already filed the separation and fraud paperwork. Because the marriage broke down due to infidelity, and he engaged in criminal financial fraud, he owns that debt 100%. If I hadn't discovered the truth, if I had stayed the obedient wife, that $300,000 debt would have fallen on my shoulders. I had saved my family from utter ruin by a hair's breadth. Serafina, my dad said softly. I looked up to see tears welling in my stoic father's eyes. I am so sorry. You suffered in that cold house for 5 years. And as your father, I didn't notice. Thinking about how alone you were when you gave birth, I feel like a failure. Seeing my dad cry broke the dam. The walls I had built up crumbled, and I sobbed like a child into my hands. My mom wrapped her arms around me. You did amazing, Sarah. You survived. We are going to protect you, she whispered. We held each other in the warm living room, washing away 5 years of suffering. This was a true family. The next morning, Sterling called. Good morning, Serafina. I've spoken with a contact at the state's attorney's office. The criminal complaint for identity theft and wire fraud is finalized. As soon as we file, that $85K loan is legally nullified for you. Thank you, Thaddeus. Last night, Garrison got a bill for $300,000 from the hospital in Dubai. Sterling let out a low whistle. Ouch. UAE medical debt is merciless. But don't worry, you are legally shielded. They have 0 escape routes. After hanging up, I opened the iPad and checked Tatum's social media. Her Instagram account, @Tatum, Future Mama, was public. It was a monument to narcissism, designer bags, expensive dinners, and the photo of the $2,500 diamond ring captioned, "A gift from my amazing future hubby." I scrolled to her latest reel, uploaded the day she went into labor. The video showed Tatum, heavily pregnant but wearing skin-tight shorts, holding a massive mocktail at a crowded outdoor World Cup fan zone in Dubai. Dubai is lit. Partying it up with my baby and my man, she shrieked into the camera. Garrison was grinning like an idiot, hugging her. Then came the kicker. Ready? Jump! Tatum yelled. The two of them started jumping up and down wildly for the camera. A pregnant woman doing violent, jerky jumps on sand. Suddenly, Tatum lost her footing, screamed, and landed violently on her backside. The camera shook. Garrison laughed. Whoops, you good? Tatum got up, rubbing her back. Fell on my ass. Hurts, but my baby is tough. She threw up a peace sign. Are you absolutely brain dead? I muttered. This video was uploaded hours before the premature labor. It wasn't a tragic medical anomaly. It was the direct result of her reckless stupidity. I screen recorded the video. If they tried to claim it was an unavoidable tragedy to scam people for money, this video would annihilate their narrative. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. An iMessage from Garrison. His first text in over a week. Sarah, are you okay? Sorry I couldn't call. There's been a massive catastrophe on the trip. My junior analyst got into a horrific car accident in Dubai. He's in a coma in the ICU. The hospital is demanding a massive cash deposit up front to do life-saving surgery. The corporate insurance is stalling. Sarah, you're at your parents' house, right? Please, beg your dad to wire me $85,000 immediately. It's life or death for my employee. I'll pay him back with interest when corporate reimburses me. Do it for me and for our baby. Please. I stared at the screen, utterly repulsed by his pathetic lies. A junior analyst in a coma? It was a desperate, calculated lie to steal my dad's retirement money to cover Tatum's hospital bills. Just as Olympe had orchestrated in the group chat, I showed my dad. His face contorted in disgust. An accident? He's still trying to scam us. They aren't human, Sarah. They're monsters. I forwarded the text to Sterling. He replied instantly, Do not respond. Leave him on read. Let him panic. He will fly back to Chicago to try and handle it in person. That's when we dropped the hammer. Late that night, an alert popped up. Garrison had booked a frantic one-way Emirates flight from Dubai to Chicago O'Hare for the next day. He was fleeing the UAE, abandoning Tatum and his premature baby in the hospital to escape the debt and try to extort the money from us in person. 2 days later, the doorbell at my parents' house rang. It was Olympe. Harlan, Lenora, consider this a small price to pay to save your daughter's marriage. Her theatrical, shrill voice rang out as she invited herself into our living room. Assuming I had relayed Garrison's fake story, Olympe came to close the deal. She sat on the sofa, sighing dramatically. I was terrified when Garrison told me. His poor employee, in a coma. Garrison is such a heroic leader, taking on the financial burden to save his subordinate's life. She dabbed her dry eyes with a tissue, but a reptilian greed glinted in her gaze. I could feel my dad practically vibrating with rage beside me. Playing the part of the terrified wife, I looked down. But Olympe, $85,000 is so much money. Olympe sneered. Sarah, don't you see the pressure he's under? If he lets this employee die, he'll be fired. Do you want your newborn daughter growing up with a bankrupt, unemployed father? Harlan, as a retired union man, you understand duty. Your 401 com must be fully funded. Think of it as an investment in Sarah's future. Tap into it. We will pay you back every cent. My dad slowly uncurled his fists and used his deepest, most even voice. I hear Garrison lands at O'Hare tomorrow. I need to hear the details from him directly before I wire that kind of money. Thinking she had won, Olympe smiled triumphantly. Very reasonable, Harlan. Oh, and Sarah? Garrison lands tomorrow afternoon. He will be exhausted. I expect you to go back to the condo, deep clean it, have a hot pot roast ready, and wait for your husband. And bring your dad's checkbook. Yes, I replied smoothly. I'll be waiting for him at the condo tomorrow. Olympe, please come over later too. I'd like us to discuss the future of our family. Excellent, she hummed, walking out the door. She had no idea she was sending herself into the slaughterhouse. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed. Garrison. Just landed at O'Hare, taking an Uber Black home. I'm dead on my feet. Have a hot bath drawn, dinner ready, and leave the check from your dad on the counter. Be home in an hour. Demanding and arrogant to the bitter end. I didn't reply. Stepping out of the Uber in front of the Chicago condo, Garrison looked like a walking corpse. The confident swagger of his departure was gone. He had a patchy beard, deep black bags under his eyes, and his suit was horribly wrinkled. The $300,000 figure was a siren blaring in his skull. When Tatum had fallen and been rushed to the hospital, the doctors rattled off terms in broken English. All he understood was handing over his credit card for the deposit. Instead of worrying about the woman he supposedly loved, his only thought was terror for his own bank account. He had fed Tatum a lie. Babe, I'm going to fly back, get the corporate insurance money, and return. I promise. Then he hopped on the first flight out, leaving her stranded. If I can just get that 85 grand from Sarah's idiot dad, I can stave off bankruptcy long enough to figure this out, he thought. As he approached the porch, he saw Olympe waiting for him. Garrison, you look awful, she gasped. Mom? Why are you here? I was so worried. The poor employee. And did Sarah tell you? I went to Harlan's house and applied some pressure. The old man folded. He said he'd have the money ready when you got back. A sliver of relief pierced Garrison's panic. It worked. That submissive doormat and her boomer parents caved. I told Sarah to clean the house and have dinner ready. She's probably trembling inside waiting for you, Olympe boasted as they walked up the steps. Garrison rolled his shoulders. If Sarah complains even once, I'll scream at her. I'll make her feel guilty for my stress. He slid his key into the deadbolt. Hey, Sarah, I'm home, he yelled, stepping into the foyer. No smell of pot roast, no warm lighting, no timid welcome home. The house was eerily dark and freezing cold. What is that useless woman doing? Garrison clicked his tongue, flipping the hallway light switch. The moment the stark light flooded the space, both Garrison and Olympe froze. Huh? Olympe let out a dumbfounded squeak. The massive custom shoe rack in the entryway was gone. There wasn't a single pair of slippers. We got robbed? Garrison, pale as a ghost, walked into the hallway in his socks. His footsteps echoed unnaturally loud. Sarah, where are you? He threw open the living room doors and hit the lights. His suitcase slipped from his grip, hitting the floor with a massive thud. Olympe gasped, covering her mouth in horror. There was absolutely nothing in the room. The expensive leather sectional, the TV, the dining table, the custom drapes all gone. Only the rectangular indentations in the carpet proved furniture had ever been there. What is this? What the hell is going on? Garrison's voice bounced off the bare walls. She took everything! Sarah ran away with the furniture, Olympe shrieked. Garrison scanned the room, his knees knocking. In the exact center of the room sat his cheap glass bachelor coffee table. And on top of it was a thick manila envelope, drawn to it like a magnet. His heart hammering against his ribs, Garrison approached. Maybe it's the $85,000 check. Maybe she left the money and ran. He ripped open the envelope. It wasn't a check. It was a stack of legal documents. The top document, printed in bold red and black ink. Petition for dissolution of marriage and confession of judgment. Fraud. It demanded Garrison surrender all marital assets and explicitly confess to electronically forging my signature for the $85,000 loan. Fraud? Garrison rasped. Olympe peered over his shoulder, speechless. But the nightmare was just beginning. The second document was a formal legal notice from Thaddeus Sterling, attorney at law. Notice of intent to sue. Intentional infliction of emotional distress and pending criminal complaint for identity theft and wire fraud. Criminal complaint? What does this mean? Garrison squeaked. The letter outlined everything. Tatum Vance, the drained $25,000, the fake business trip to Dubai. Impossible. I changed my passcode. How did she find out? Garrison dumped the envelope out. Color printouts fluttered to the hardwood floor. Garrison felt like he'd been hit with a sledgehammer. They were screenshots of the hidden iPad's family group chat. I'll have her backed into a corner. Take out an $85K loan. Sarah was never anything more than our ATM. Mom, she knew everything. She knew the whole time and played us. Garrison's legs gave out, and he collapsed to his knees. Next was the printout of Tatum's Instagram, the video of her jumping around the World Cup fan zone. Dubai is lit! Fell on my ass! Garrison's fake story of the junior analyst in a coma was obliterated. It was documented proof of an attempted scam against my parents. The final document was a copy of the $85,000 loan agreement, accompanied by a terrifying paragraph from Sterling. Forging your spouse's digital signature as a guarantor on an $85,000 personal loan constitutes federal wire fraud and felony identity theft. The criminal complaint is drafted and ready for filing with the Chicago Police Department and the state's attorney. Furthermore, a formal ethical complaint detailing this financial fraud will be submitted to your corporate HR department. Felony, police. A high-pitched wheeze escaped Garrison's throat. He owed $300,000 in Dubai. He was about to be arrested for an $85,000 fraudulent loan. He would be fired for cause, receive zero severance, and lose his career forever. Between the debt, the fraud, and my civil suits, he was looking at nearly $500,000 in liabilities. My life is over. It's completely over. He mumbled like a broken toy. Suddenly, Olympe shrieked hysterically. What is this? Why do I have to pay damages? She was holding a civil notification addressed to her. Demand for $50,000 for tortious interference and civil conspiracy to commit financial fraud. I have nothing to do with this. Garrison did this on his own. I'm not paying this from my retirement. Olympe panicked, trying to rip the copies to shreds, only to fall to the floor sobbing. The arrogant mother-in-law who wanted to steal my dad's pension was crying over her own ruined retirement. We have to leave. Mom, let's get out of here before her lawyer shows up. Garrison tried to pull her up. Ding dong. The video doorbell chimed, echoing like a death knell in the empty house. Garrison swallowed hard and crept over to the security monitor on the wall. On the screen stood me, perfectly composed, wearing a sharp trench coat. Beside me was my dad, Harlan, arms crossed, radiating pure fury, and Thaddeus Sterling in a bespoke suit. Welcome home, Garrison. Hope you had a blast in Dubai. My voice carried smoothly through the intercom. Garrison flinched. The arrogant man who treated me like dirt was gone, replaced by a terrified, cornered rat. He scrambled to hit the intercom button. Sarah, what are you doing? Emptying the house? Leaving me legal threats when I am killing myself trying to save my employee in Dubai? You are a horrible, unsupportive wife, Olympe chimed in, yelling at the camera. Sarah, have you lost your mind? Harlan, your daughter is being hysterical. Garrison needs $85,000 to save a life. Cut the crap. My dad's booming voice shattered the speaker. He glared into the lens. The employee in a coma? We know exactly what you were doing in Dubai. My dad held up his phone to the camera, blasting the audio of Tatum's Instagram video. Dubai is lit. Ready? Jump. Ah, fell on my ass. The color vanished completely from Garrison and Olympe's faces. That's your dying employee? My dad roared. You abandoned your pregnant wife to party with your mistress, and because she's an idiot, she fell and put herself in the hospital. That's the truth, isn't it? Garrison stumbled backward, crashing into the drywall. Sterling leaned into the microphone. Mr. Garrison, you utilized your wife's identity to forge a DocuSign signature on an $85,000 personal loan to lease an apartment for Miss Tatum Vance. This is a Class 2 felony in Illinois. The state's attorney's office has been notified. Wait, Mr. Sterling, I was going to ask her permission later, Garrison cried out pathetically. Furthermore, Sterling continued ruthlessly, we have documented evidence of your maxed-out credit card and the hospital's $300,000 estimated bill for the emergency C-section and NICU care. Olympe gasped in horror. $300,000? Garrison had lied to her about the amount. How do you know that amount? Garrison screamed at the camera. The alert for the $15,000 deposit came to my phone, I replied coldly. I saw the forwarded hospital bill and immediately called Chase to cancel my association with all joint cards. That $300,000 medical debt is your sole personal problem. I don't owe a single red cent. Garrison's knees finally gave out entirely. He collapsed to the floor, pressing his forehead against the cold wood. It's a lie. $500,000. I can't pay that in a lifetime. If HR finds out, if I'm arrested, I'm ruined. He began sobbing violently, snot running down his face. He crawled toward the front door. Sarah, please. It was a mistake. I'll leave Tatum. Just drop the felony charges. Harlan, please, lend me $30,000. Your family, please help me. Family? My voice was deadly calm. How dare you use that word? When I was agonizing over IVF, you looked at me with disgust. When I was in labor, you were laughing with your mistress. You stole my daughter's savings and tried to bankrupt my parents. This is the hell you chose. Walk through it yourself. Garrison let out an animalistic wail, pounding his fists against the floor. I had nothing to do with this, Olympe suddenly screamed, crawling toward the door monitor. Sarah, please. I was manipulated by Garrison. He forced me to sign that lease. I'm an old woman. I can't pay $50,000. This is all my stupid son's fault. Don't ruin me. A mother throwing her own son under the bus to save her designer handbags. Olympe, I sighed. Your group chats are fully documented. Sarah is our ATM. Take her parents' money for my luxury condo. You orchestrated this. If this goes to court, every single one of your friends, neighbors, and relatives will see those transcripts. For a woman whose entire existence revolved around social status and appearances, that was the ultimate death sentence. Olympe buried her face in her hands and wailed. Let's go, Dad, Thaddeus. We're done here, I said, turning away from the camera. Suddenly, a piercing ringtone echoed from inside the house. Garrison's cell phone, lying on the floor, was vibrating. The caller ID read, International call, UAE. Garrison grabbed it with shaking hands and hit speakerphone. Tatum? Tatum, what happened? But it wasn't Tatum's whiny voice. Mr. Garrison? Am I speaking to Mr. Garrison? A formal, stern voice with a slight Arabic accent echoed through the speaker. Yes. Who is this? This is the Medical Administration Director at the Waldorf Astoria Affiliated Hospital in Dubai. We found this mobile device in Miss Tatum Vance's room. We are contacting you urgently. Is she okay? The administrator delivered the lethal blow. Miss Vance has absconded from the facility. During the nursing rounds, she was discovered missing. She left her hospital gown on the bed, took her passport, wallet, and all valuables. Security footage confirms she walked out, hailed a taxi, and headed toward Dubai International Airport. Garrison's jaw dropped. She ran away? After major surgery? What about the premature baby in the NICU? The infant is currently receiving critical care in our neonatal unit. However, the mother has abandoned her child and fled the country. Garrison stopped breathing. Mr. Garrison, the administrator's voice hardened. As the signatory on the admission and the financial guarantor on file, you are now solely responsible. Miss Vance's flight means the entire $300,000 balance, plus all accruing daily NICU costs, fall entirely on you. If you refuse to pay, or if you attempt to abandon this child as well, we will immediately contact UAE authorities, issue an international Interpol notice for debt evasion and child abandonment, and file a petition with U.S. authorities. Click. The line went dead. The phone slipped from Garrison's hand. The mistress he claimed was his true treasure didn't love him. She loved his money. The second she realized she was staring down the barrel of a $300,000 debt and legal trouble, She abandoned her own premature baby and fled the country, leaving Garrison to hang. Ah! Ah! Garrison tore at his hair like a madman, slamming his head against the floor. She left me. She framed me for the debt. Prison. Bankruptcy. No! Olympe watched her son lose his mind, pure terror etched on her face. If she stayed tethered to him, her life was over. We walked away from the door, the sounds of their pathetic, echoing screams fading into the chilly Chicago wind. A month later, the crisp autumn air had fully given way to the biting cold of a Chicago winter. I sat in Thaddeus Sterling's office with my dad. On the desk lay a thick binder and a freshly minted court decree. Congratulations, Serafina. It's finalized. Sterling smiled warmly, handing me a cup of coffee. The divorce is absolute. Your maiden name is restored. The $85,000 loan was discharged from your record, and the settlement guarantees your financial independence. Sterling filled us in on their fates. It was worse than I could have imagined. Following the hospital's threats, Garrison's HR department was notified of the felony fraud investigation. He was fired for cause, stripped of his stock options, and blacklisted in his industry. He was currently avoiding federal prison only by cooperating and garnishing his wages from his new, back-breaking manual labor jobs just to pay the interest on the massive international debt. He would be paying it off until the day he died. And Olympe? I asked. She had to liquidate her suburban house to pay her portion of Garrison's legal fees and your civil settlement. The transcripts from the iPad went public in the family court records. Her entire extended family read how she planned to scam your father. She has been completely disowned. She lives in a cramped studio apartment and works the night shift as a janitor. And Tatum Vance? She tried to flee, but U.S. Customs and Border Protection flagged her upon landing at JFK. She was detained for international child abandonment and wire fraud conspiracy. Her parents had to file for bankruptcy trying to afford her criminal defense. They had destroyed themselves with their own arrogance and greed. Thank you, Thaddeus. For everything, I said, standing up and shaking his hand. Walking out of the high-rise, the Chicago skyline sparkled under a clear, bright blue sky. The winter wind whipped my hair. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel cold. The heavy fog that had suffocated me was gone. On the drive back to the suburbs, I opened my new legal documents. There, printed beautifully, was my daughter's name. Carrying my family's legacy, completely severed from that nightmare. When I opened the door to my parents' house, the rich, savory smell of my mom's pot roast and chicken noodle soup wafted from the kitchen. Sarah, Harlan, just in time for dinner, my mom, Lenora, smiled from the stove. In the living room, my daughter was awake in her bassinet, kicking her little legs and cooing. I washed my hands and rushed over, scooping her soft, warm body into my arms. She smiled a pure, angelic smile. Sarah, look at your grandmother's photo before we eat, my mom called out. I walked over to the mantel where the framed photos of our ancestors sat. I touched the frame gently. Grandma, I finally made it to the starting line of my new life. Mom, Dad, and I are going to raise this little girl with so much love. For 5 years, I had killed my own spirit, chained to the outdated idea that a good wife must suffer in silence to keep the peace. But a true family isn't built on the sacrifice of one person. It's built on respect, shared tears, and shared laughter. Come eat before it gets cold, my mom called. My dad opened a special bottle of Cabernet, his eyes crinkling with genuine joy. Holding my daughter tight against my chest, I looked out the frosted window at the winter stars. My life wasn't over. In fact, all the tears I had shed were just the baptism for the true happiness I was finally stepping into. I was no one's ATM, and I was no one's maid. I would walk forward on my own 2 feet, fiercely protecting the irreplaceable warmth in my arms,